Okay, so this is a video tutorial on how to adjust your images in Photoshop for uploading to your AP Studio exam or to any other digital media. What you need to first do is have Photoshop open, so if you go to your Finder, under Applications, you should be able to find Adobe Photoshop. Click on that and open it up. I already have Photoshop open here. And then what you need to do is you can either go to File, Open, and select an image, or you could go to your downloads or any image off your desktop and just drag it in, and it'll open it up for you. Okay, the first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to adjust the frame of the image here. We have a couple things to consider. We're going to be eventually using our crop tool, which is over here on the left. But before we do that, if you notice, this is not a perfect rectangle. That means that either the paper was slightly off or it was cut or hanging at an angle when it was photographed. So if I were to just do a straight crop tool, and I can show you that, when this comes across, I would chop off a good part of the design in the bottom corner if I were to do that. So before I do that, I want to make some adjustments. So I'm going to say don't crop, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to get my selection tool. I'm going to draw a rectangle around the image, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Skew. I'm going to click on Skew. That allows me to adjust this picture and warp it a little bit. So I'm going to grab the upper right corner, and I'm first going to pull it up so I have something nice and straight. Then I'm going to take that corner again, and I'm going to drag it and get the upper right corner to be a little more in line with the bottom. Once I have that the way I want it, hit return, and now I'm ready to crop the image. Now I'm going to go to my cropping tool. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to crop. If you want to zoom in a little bit to see what you're doing, you can hit the Command key and the plus key, and that allows you to zoom in a little bit on your image so you can see what you're doing. Okay, so as I crop, I'm able to click the corner and drag it along. You may see that if you hover the crop tool just off the corner, you can see right there now how it's a little bit of a curved arrow. When it's in that position, if I tilt the picture, I can correct the angles that way too. This would be something to do if you took the picture a little bit crooked. Okay, so I can anyway continue back and crop. Remember, you don't want any of the background, but you're trying to preserve as much of the actual picture as you can. So I'm going to come in on this side as well. I can scroll up and make sure that the bottom looks good. Okay, so I'm satisfied with the way that looks, so I'll hit return, and now my image is cropped. Okay, the next thing that you might notice is that there are a few tacks in the picture. Okay, and we need to get rid of those. We don't want those to show up in our final picture. So we have a couple choices of what we can do there. I'm going to zoom in just another click more, and I'm going to show you two different ways to fix that. The first one is called the spot healing tool. It looks like a little band-aid. So you click on that, and when I drag my mouse over, you can see the image diameter. You can see the diameter of this little circle of my spot healing tool. If I'm not satisfied with that size, I can go over here and I can play around. I can make the diameter smaller and test it out, or I could make it larger. Okay, so I'm going to go actually similar to the way it was. I was pretty satisfied with that. And now I want to go ahead and work on my picture. So with the spot healing tool selected, if I want this to disappear, I can start clicking over here and just kind of drag it across the area that needs to be fixed, and you can see that Photoshop will kind of make that correction. You want to be careful where you do that so you don't have the image really altered. Again, every effort needs to be made to have your final digital image reflect accurately the original artwork. But I think that this was a pretty fair change. Okay, and we can also do that here. And I think that made a pretty good correction. I'm actually going to step back just to show you a different way that you can fix that. And for anything you do in Photoshop, you have a couple of options. If you click on Edit, you are usually able to undo the previous action, and you can see that you can also hit Command Z if you like to do the keystrokes better. But so you can click Undo or step backward, okay? And these are ways to kind of get out of a previous setting if you did something that you're not happy with. Okay, so the other one I wanted to take you to is to have you try something called the Clone Stamp Tool. So I'm going to click on the Clone Stamp Tool. That also has a little diameter dropper, and again you can adjust it same place. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. And I can choose either to have a soft, sort of blended out side, or I can have hard edges. Okay, for this one I think I'll try the soft. And what you're doing here is you're essentially using it like a dropper. You're going to need to click on the Option tool. You can see what happens inside that little circle. When I click on the Option tool, then I'm taking a sample. If I click, now I've taken a sample of the coloring in that part of it, the image, and now I can sort of drag across and cover that up a little. So I'm going to sample and cover that up. Now it's not covering completely, as I'm using, that's what the softer diameter would do. That would do probably better in more of a blended out, very fine blended painting. So we can try it with the hard edge tool, and that's a little more precise in the coloring that it grabs. So again, I'm going to hit my Option, and I can cover that up. And there it's gone. Now if I needed that to be a little more dark, again I can come over here, select maybe from here, and cover that up. Okay, so you really have a couple different choices in how you want to do it, whether you do the spot healing or the clone stamp, and you can play around with what you think works best. So now if I zoom back out and I can see the full image here, I want to look at adjusting the overall color of the picture, because that sometimes gets affected too by taking the picture. You want to try to take your photos in as much natural light as possible, which is why we often take the pictures in the back of the room by the windows. You can also just go outside, put your painting on the ground, and from above take a picture of it. But you want to have natural light as much as possible. If you need to make corrections, where you're going to go is under Image, and you have a lot of different options. There are some auto clicks here. I usually think that they overdo it. I'll just click on Auto Color to show you what I mean. It tries to make too many decisions, and it's usually not what you want. So again, as I said, you can either undo, you could step back. You also have options of fading that effect, which means you could kind of play with that a little bit, not have it quite as strong. But in general, I would skip the auto color. Instead, go under Image Adjustments, and here will be a lot of different varieties for you to look at. I'm going to show you curves. I think that's the most effective one to work with, but there are a few other things. You could just start with Brightness Contrast, and anytime the Preview button is clicked, that means you're going to see what's happening. So you can up the contrast, decrease the contrast, you can make it lighter. Okay, so that's one tool. You can also look at the exposure. This would be good for people working with your digital photography. Hue, saturation, and color balance I will also show you. This would be where you want to perhaps play around with the hues, and you can see what happens on the screen as you play with that. The other one that you might work on is a color balance, and that just kind of will alter some of the overall color. Okay, So to the easiest one, and I think the tool that for most students, for most pictures, works the best, is to go to Image Adjustments, and it's called Curves. Okay? And again, with the preview clicked, we're able to see kind of what we have going on. So by clicking on this line and kind of dragging it around, you can adjust simultaneously the coloring as well as the exposure, and it gives you kind of a good range to work with. If you let go and then click on another place, this gives you a few more options. And of course, as I said, you're always able to preview it and see what you like. You never want to overdo something. If the colors were not that rich in your original painting, then don't do that for your picture. Okay, so something about there seems true to the original, so I'm going to say okay. Okay, so now our picture is pretty much ready to go. The last thing we have to do is we have to adjust the image size. Image size is critical because that's the file size, and if you have too large a file, it will not upload correctly to the website. So what I'm going to give you are specific sizes that are per the recommendations of the AP College Board and work well for most kids and most pictures. All right, so the first thing is that all of our pictures default come in at 72 resolution, which is not very high. We're going to up it to 200. And before we hit OK, we're also going to adjust the size of the picture. You'll notice that they also come in fairly large. 37 inches by 26 is huge. So we're going to make sure that Constrain Proportions is clicked, because what that means is if I make a change here to height, let's say I change it to 10 inches, it automatically will adjust the width within the same proportions. So it won't stretch my picture wide or alter that incorrectly. Okay, so for the AP exam, the recommended maximum size for the longest dimension is 10.83 inches. Kind of random, but that's what it is. So you're going to decide which is the longest dimension. So in our case, the longest dimension is the height. So I'm going to set the height at 10.83 inches. It has automatically adjusted the width to keep it in proportion, and you can see that the file size has gone down significantly. It was 14, now it's 9.5. So I'm going to say OK. Now it looks smaller, don't worry about that. What you then do is you're going to go to View, and you're going to click to Fit on Screen, and it will blow up to the correct size for the screen. The last step you want to do is File, Save As. Okay, so I'm going to just put a name on it. For you, you could put something like your last name, breadth 1, so that you're able to keep track of what it is. Click Save. You can keep it at maximum. Say OK, and you're done. If for some reason when you upload this to the website for the AP and you see that it has a little exclamation point that there's a problem with uploading, all you need to do, it might mean that the file is too big. All you would need to do is go back to your image size and go down, reduce your resolution to maybe 120, and you see that that made the file quite a bit smaller, and so you can say OK. Again, Fit on Screen. We'll just save this as 2, and then you are ready to go.